You guys, Evergreen Avenue School is a good place to learn and to be at.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Do you know who makes that possible?
No, who?
Dr. Vivadelli.
I agree.
I wonder how did he get his position that he is now?
We should get some advice from him so we could share after the community.
I agree, Daddy.
And plus, he's a doctor.
And I agree.
Do you guys think that he has been in problems that we might face in the future?
Yes.
Yes. I knew it probably wasn't easy for him. And he's been in school longer than we've been alive.
Yeah.
He had to have perseverance and hard work to get a doctor's degree.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
You might run into some stuff that might not always go well for you, but you have to go through it.
Yeah.
Keep trying.
Do that hard work.
Agree.
What step did you take to become a principal?
Well, I had to go to school, I had to go to college, and you have to graduate from college, and you have to get a teaching license. I did all of that. I became a middle school in 8th grade history teacher, and I taught history for 5 years. During that time, I went back to school and got my master's degree in school administration, and then I became an assistant principal at a junior high school, Woodbury Senior High School. I guess that was 8 years ago now. And then the very next year, I became the high school assistant principal, and I did that for 3 years. And then 4 years ago, I became the principal here in Evergreen. So I've been the principal here for the past 4 years. So those are kind of my steps. And then actually 2 years ago, while I was here, I went back to school again to get my doctorate in educational leadership. And so that's how I went from Mr. Vivadelli to Dr. Vivadelli.
What was the best day of your job or of your life?
Well, definitely of my life. I got married to my beautiful wife. That was definitely a best day of my life. The birth of each of my children was also an exciting time of my life. And in terms of school, the best day of my life. I think every day we have there's a lot of little things that I remember that make me smile. You're my interviewer here, Jordan, and I can remember when you won the turkey trot. And that image of you crossing that finish line and me trying to keep up with you running around that track was something that I remember. I have similar memories such as that for all the kids in school. So.
What inspired you to get into education?
What inspired me to get into education? Originally when I was in school, I didn't want to go into education. It really wasn't on my mind. I thought that in college I wanted to be a lawyer, so I wanted to go to law school. So I started down that path, and then I realized while I was still in school that I kind of didn't want to go in that direction, and a college professor that I had kind of steered me and said, well, what about teaching? And I was a history major at the time, so it was like the first point that I really considered it. I started to substitute teaching. At that point I realized I really liked it, so kind of one thing led to another, and then I went into education. And then originally it was not something that I was interested in. It was something that happened a little bit later in life. That's probably something that will happen for many of you guys who are watching this as well.
Has there ever been a time that you felt you couldn't achieve a goal in your life, and why?
I can't recall a time where I ever felt that there was something I couldn't achieve. I'm definitely a big believer in, and I always kind of have been, if you try hard enough and you wait long enough, that you'll eventually be successful. So I always felt I just needed to try a little bit harder and work a little bit longer, and I would eventually get there.
In your own words, how do you help your community?
Well, I feel like the Woodbury community is my community, and I try to help all of our students here at Evergreen as best I can in a lot of different ways. Just this fall, I participated in the strategic planning process for the Woodbury community. That's where all community members, teachers, administrators, and even high school students got together to talk about the direction that the Woodbury schools should go in, and that was a really fun and interesting process for me, so I enjoyed that thoroughly. And I guess my home community, I feel like I'm in the Woodbury community more than my home community. I volunteer as an athletic coach for different sports that my kids are involved in, so I try to help out in that capacity at home as well.
What is the most challenging part of your job?
Making sure that all kids are successful. I think it's easier to design programs and things that help groups of students, but to make sure that every student within that group is successful is probably my most challenging thing that I do each and every day, because I don't want someone to go through Evergreen Avenue School and not be successful. So making sure that every single kid that I have is successful is my most challenging thing.
Describe your most difficult challenge and how I overcame that challenge.
My most difficult challenge probably centers around the dissertation I had to write for my doctorate. You have to write this really big, long paper, almost like a book, in order to get your doctorate, in addition to going through a number of classes. And I think everyone who goes through that process at some point thinks that, like, you wonder, like, why am I really doing this? Because it takes a lot of work and a lot of effort. So I think pushing through that and making sure I persevere and I showed that effort was the most challenging thing that I've done, at least professionally.
Do you have any advice for the next generation?
Woodbury youth?
Yes.
I do. I would say embrace failure. We talk, especially at this school, a lot about having a growth mindset, and I would advise all of my students that no one accomplishes anything worthwhile without failing at some point. So, and all of us are going to experience failure, and life is really about how you handle that failure and how you push through it. So I would say embrace the failure, because that's where the learning happens.
Describe the worst day of your life.
Tough question. The worst day of my life, I wouldn't describe it as the worst day of my life, but probably the most challenging day of my life, maybe difficult day of my life. Probably when my youngest daughter was born. She was born with a condition called Down syndrome, and I didn't up until that point I really didn't know a lot about Down syndrome, and it's kind of, the things I did know were kind of scary, and I was a little scared for how her life was going to be down the road. That was probably the most difficult day I had to experience, but you know, almost 3 years later, I've kind of learned a lot, but the shock of when she was first born was probably the most difficult.
What is your favorite part of the job?
I love being able to go into classrooms and see a kid get really, really excited about something that they just learned for the first time, and seeing that look of excitement on their face and them being, you know, just purely happy because they got something. That is definitely my favorite part. Seeing all of you meet like your reading goals, and seeing you in the hallway or in the reading room really pushing through and enjoying what you're reading and having that love of reading is really exciting for me. And then I really like seeing when you come back. You know, you all are here for a long time, and then you go off to junior high school, and some of you come back to visit, and I enjoy seeing how you've gotten a little bit taller, you've learned a few more things, and you've come back and, you know, share those experiences with us. So I enjoy that as well.
What is the most important letter of S.L.A.G to you?
Glad you asked that question. Since you guys are the S.L.A.G group, I think the G, gentleman. I think that's the most important letter. I think to me, being a gentleman represents being, one aspect is being kind. I think kindness is the most important thing. There's a famous quote that says that kindness is more important than wisdom, and the recognition of that is the beginning of wisdom. So I definitely think kindness is the most important, and you being a gentleman in your daily interactions is the most important. I hope you learned a lot about that in your S.L.A.G group. So.
How do you feel about the letter of scholar?
Scholar is definitely important as well. Obviously, we're in a school, and you know, learning is the most, you know, what we do here. But if you go back to that quote I just said, I think being kind to your friends, to your family, to people you don't know is more important than what you know. So I would go with being a gentleman. And say please and thank you. And hold doors for ladies.